Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Robert Canter. Over the course of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Franchise, we've seen a lot of action-packed battles, but we've never seen a fight between two of the series' heaviest hitters. Seto Kaiba, Yugi and Atem's eternal rival, and Zane Truesdale, one of the greatest students to ever grace the halls of Duel Academy. Today we'll be discussing who I think would win an advanced format duel in real life. But before we get into that, I want to tell you about my books, The Shadow Angel Genesis and The True Story of Mrs. Claus. The Shadow Angel Genesis is the story of a man whose soul is locked in perpetual servitude. Over the course of 500 years, he has been fighting all manner of supernatural and satanic threats to the Catholic Church. The True Story of Mrs. Claus is a creative but wholesome reimagining of a character who was well known but often overlooked. Click the links in the description below to get your copies today. And be sure to keep your eyes open for my upcoming murder mystery, the South Bend Dark Frog Murders. Seto Kaiba is the head of the world's largest multinational gaming conglomerate. His genius-level intellect and resources helped him become the #1 ranked duelist in the world. His place at the top seemed untouchable, until a certain high school kid with a really weird haircut that just happened to be sharing bodies with the spirit of an ancient Egyptian pharaoh showed up out of the blue and ruined everything. From that day forward, Kaiba made it his mission to defeat Yugi in a game of duel monsters. Kaiba's most essential card is the legendary Blue Eyes White Dragon. After all this time, it still holds the world record for normal monster with highest attack. Blue Eyes decks typically focus on field control by destroying the opponent's monsters. For example, Blue Eyes Alternative White Dragon can destroy one monster per turn with its special effect instead of attacking. Dragon Spirit of White can banish one spell or trap card when it's normal or special summoned. But if Kaiba needs a bit more firepower to get the job done, he has a whole handful of fusion monsters, ritual monsters, and tons of other support cards. Blue Eyes Twin Burst Dragon cannot be destroyed in battle, and its effect can banish any monster that battles with it. If Kaiba combines it with the trap card's Spirit Barrier, then he no longer needs to worry about his life points when attacking stronger monsters. If Kaiba gets 3 Blue Eyes or Blue Eyes alternatives, he can fuse them together to summon either Neo Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon or Blue Eyes Alternative Ultimate Dragon. If Neo Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon is the only monster Kaiba has in play, he can discard 2 Blue Eyes fusion monsters from his extra deck to gain 2 additional attacks. If Neo Blue Eyes ends up in the graveyard, Kaiba can banish it to protect his monsters from 1 card effect. Blue Eyes Alternative Ultimate Dragon cannot be targeted or destroyed by card effects, and if it is summoned with at least 1 Blue Eyes Alternative White Dragon as fusion material, it can destroy up to 3 cards the opponent controls, and they don't have to be monsters. Kaiba does not need to screw the rules to summon multiple dragons in a single turn, and if he times his combos just right, he can inflict massive damage or blow his opponent away with an OTK. Overcoming his rival wasn't the most important thing in Kaiba's life. It was his life. Even after Atem had passed on, Kaiba was determined to have the final word. He built an elevator into space so he could have a computer reassemble the Millennium Puzzle in 0 gravity, the cost of which must have been astronomical. No pun intended. Also, not only does his company have records of every card ever played on one of his duel discs, but they can also apparently be used to spy on people. But who's brave enough to sue this guy for invasion of privacy? Naturally, when you've got an intellect and resources like Kaiba's, you're probably a cocky dick. You'd think this guy would never lose anything, ever. But you'd also be wrong. Kaiba has his fair share of downsides. This includes a weakness to Exodia, dragon capture jars, the Buster Blader archetype, and a bad habit of using up his hand. Still, if you underestimate Kaiba, you will be on the receiving end of his dragon's wrath. Zane Truesdale is one of the most powerful students to ever grace the halls of Duel Academy. He is also one of the few duelists that Jaden was never able to beat, only tie with. Zane's deck focuses on summoning powerful machine fusion monsters like Cyber End Dragon, Chimera Tech Over Dragon, and Chimera Tech Rampage Dragon, which he can pump up with cards like Power Bond and Limiter Removal. Cyber Twin Dragon may not look like much, but if it's summoned with Power Bond, Zane has a monster with 5,600 attack points that can attack twice during the battle phase. When Chimera Tech Rampage Dragon is successfully summoned, Zane can destroy spell or trap cards up to the number of Cyber Dragons that were used to summon it. In addition, Zane can give this monster 2 additional attacks each turn for the small price of sending 2 light attribute machine monsters from his deck to the graveyard. Chimera Tech Over Dragon's attack points are equal to the number of fusion materials used to summon him times 800. In addition, it can attack the opponent's monsters equal to the number of fusion materials used. Zane's most iconic monster has always been his Cyber End Dragon. This monster has a piercing effect, and if Zane summons it with Power Bond, its 4,000 attack points are doubled. At the end of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX Season 1, Zane was able to power up his Cyber End Dragon so it had 36,900 attack points. In the anime and manga, that's more than enough to OTK the opponent 9 times. In the second season of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, Zane acquired the Cyber Dark monsters. Now, when these cards were first released, many duelists would have agreed that they weren't worth ruining your health over, especially when you've already got a perfectly functioning Cyber Dragon deck. Dragons and machine monsters aren't really compatible. The Cyber Dark monsters are all Dark attribute, meaning that they cannot be used to activate Chimera Tech Rampage Dragon's effect, nor can they be used to summon Cyber Eltanin. But over time, new support cards were added to this archetype. The main focus of the Cyber Dark cards is to quickly summon Cyber Dark monsters. When their effects are properly utilized, they have a maximum of 2,400 attack points. Zane can then use the effects of Cyber Dark Claw and Cyber Dark Cannon to send more monsters from his deck and extra deck to the graveyard, which he can then use for fusions with the effects of cards like Cyber Dark Chimera, Overload Fusion, or Cybernetic Fusion Support. When Cyber Dark Dragon is successfully fusion summoned, Zane can equip 1 dragon from his graveyard to it, and Cyber Dark Dragon gains that monster's attack. In addition, this monster gains 100 additional attack points for every monster in Zane's graveyard. Now, as I've already stated, machines and dragons don't really go together. Cyber Dark Claw and Cyber Dark Cannon are both dragons, but would only grant Cyber Dark Dragon a boost of 1,600. Thankfully, Zane can use the continuous trap card, Rebirth Judgment, to turn all machine monsters in his graveyard into dragons, opening up a lot more possibilities and eliminating the need for more otherwise cumbersome dragon-type monsters in his deck. Cyber Darkness Dragon is basically an upgraded Cyber Dark Dragon that can equip dragons or machines without the need of any additional card effects. In addition, when his opponent activates a card effect, Zane can send 1 card equipped to Cyber Darkness Dragon to the graveyard to negate the effect. Zane can also fuse Cyber Dark Dragon to Cyber End Dragon, or sacrifice a Cyber Dark Dragon or Cyber Darkness Dragon equipped with Cyber End Dragon to summon Cyber Dark End Dragon, which has a base attack of 5,000 and is immune to the opponent's card effects. In addition, once per turn, Zane can equip one monster from either player's graveyard to this monster, granting it one additional attack each turn. Though impressive, Zane's combos often come at great risk and costs. Power Bond forces the player to pay life points equal to the attack that was doubled. Limiter removal destroys every monster that had its attack doubled at the end of the turn. Or if Zane's not careful, his opponent could use a card like Magic Cylinder and he'd end up wiping himself out, and those attack points wouldn't make any difference against the Ubel deck. Still, few things are scarier than a big metal dragon that can obliterate your life points several times over. So, which of these two duelists would win an advanced format duel in real life? Well, this is a close one. Both of these decks focus on field control by destroying the opponent's cards. Kaiba and Zane both have combos that could end the other quickly if timed just right. Upon inspection, we notice that Zane has a slight edge in flexibility. All of Kaiba's best fusion monsters require Blue Eyes White Dragons to be summoned. Even allowing for 3 Blue Eyes alternative White Dragons in his deck, Kaiba would only have 6 Blue Eyes monsters that he could use for fusion summons. Other monsters like Dragon Spirit of White and Blue Eyes Abyss Dragon aren't compatible. Zane, on the other hand, would have a lot more compatible fusion material monsters for summoning his strongest cards. Depending on what cards he chose to go with when constructing his deck, Zane could have as many as 6 different monsters whose names become Cyber Dragon on the field, in the graveyard, or both. It's also worth mentioning that Zane's monsters are a lot easier to summon than Kaiba's. Most of Kaiba's dragons are level 8 and require 2 tributes to normal summon. By comparison, most of the monsters that aren't part of Zane's extra deck are level 4 or lower, but Kaiba's monsters have the advantage in base attack. And Kaiba has ways of getting around the required 2 tributes for most of his monsters. For example, Kaiba could send one of his level 8 dragons to the graveyard with cards like Trade-In or Melody of Awakening Dragon, and then special summon them from the graveyard with a card like Return of the Dragon Lords. With cards like Power Bond and Limiter Removal at his disposal, Zane also had a clear advantage in terms of attack points. But Kaiba has the cards he needs to counter or avoid Zane's deadliest monsters without using plot device cards. For example, Chimera Tech Over Dragon's attack points are equal to the number of monsters used to summon it times 800, and it can attack up to 5 monsters per turn, provided Zane used at least 5 monsters to summon it. But for the small price of 1 Blue Eyes monster from his hand or deck, Kaiba could activate the spell Majesty with Eyes of Blue, and Chimera Tech wouldn't be able to attack at all. As I said earlier, Blue Eyes Twin Burst Dragon can't be destroyed in battle, and its effect would allow Kaiba to banish any monster at battles. If he had the continuous trap, Spirit Barrier, he wouldn't have to worry about his life points when attacking stronger monsters. Alternatively, he could use the trap, the Ultimate Creature Destruction, with any of his Blue Eyes monsters for the same effect. Zane's best bet will be to summon Cyber Dark End Dragon, which is unaffected by card effects and has a base attack of 5,000. If Zane managed to summon it with Power Bond, or just activate Limiter Removal once he had, it would have had 10,000 attack points. Unless Kaiba had a card like Moonmirror Shield or Battle Fusion in his deck, it would leave him stumped. We can debate the fine points all day long, but the fact of the matter is that both Kaiba and Zane only need one OTK to finish a duel. So the million-dollar question is, who can deal the killing blow first? Both Zane and Kaiba are smart enough to know that they would want to go second at the start of a duel so they could be the first to attack. But that comes down to a coin toss and what cards they draw in the first turn. Ultimately, this comes down to the laws of probability. I'm sure if we ran a simulation 100 times, there are plenty of scenarios where either Zane or Kaiba could pull out the win. There isn't really a clear victor here. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, favorite, subscribe, and if you really want to help this channel out, click the links in the description below and buy my books.